The room in Tel Aviv was clinically cold. It was known as the Aquarium, the central hub for Unit 8200, Israel's Signals Intelligence Corps. On a vast pixelated map, a single neighborhood in Beirut glowed a dull, angry red. The Dahiyeh suburb, a labyrinth of concrete and belief, the rising heart of Hezbollah and the regional station for their patrons, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. The year was 1987. The Lebanese Civil War was a vortex, pulling in Syria, Iran, Israel, and the West. For 8200, Dahiyeh was a black zone. They could hear the noise around it, the walkie-talkie chatter of militias, the official broadcasts, the Syrian army logistics. But the Corps was silent. "We are deaf," said Brigadier General Zev, his voice a low gravel. He tapped a glass wall, projecting a grainy satellite photo of a specific 4-story building. "This is the coordination center. Quds Force officers meet Hezbollah's council here. We see the cars, we see the bodyguards. We do not hear the words." The problem was fundamental. The targets were not using phones for sensitive planning. They weren't using high-frequency radio. They were sitting in a room, drinking tea, and deciding where the next suicide bomber would strike, where the next Western hostage would be taken. "A human source is impossible," said a young analyst. "The penetration risk is 100%. They're a closed circle." Zev stared at the photo. "If we cannot get a man inside the room, we will get a machine." He turned to a man standing in the shadow, a man who did not belong to 8200. This was Elias, a field Katza from Caesarea, the Mossad's operational division. Elias hadn't spoken. He just watched, his eyes scanning the telemetry, the charts of signal shadow. "The target is fortified," Zev continued. "Concrete rebar, no windows on the north or west. The south is a blind alley. The east faces the street. 2 windows on the 3rd floor. That is the meeting room." Elias stepped forward, his presence filling the room with a different kind, action-based, tactical. "You want me to put a bug in that room?" "We need you to," Zev corrected. "A physical plant is suicide. The sweeps are constant. It must be remote." Elias looked at the map, then at the grainy photos. He was no longer seeing a building. He was seeing angles, vectors, and lines of sight. He saw the street, the shops, the apartments opposite. "A laser microphone," Elias said, his voice flat. From across the street, the analyst spoke up. "The distance is 40 meters. The glass is likely thick. It will work, but it requires a fixed position, a permanent, manned 24/7 position." "No," Elias said. "Manned is a liability. It must be automated. A fire-and-forget system that transmits. It needs a shell, a location." He pointed to a small, blurry shape on the satellite photo, directly opposite the target's eastern windows. It was a 2-story building, shabby with a faded awning. "What is that?" the analyst typed. A new file opened. "A business. Local registry. Café Paradis. Owner, Ibrahim Kassis. Maronite Christian. Age 48. Failing." Elias stared at the file. The noise of Tel Aviv faded. He could already smell the bitter coffee and stale tobacco of Beirut. He saw the target, and now he saw the vessel. "Ibrahim Kassis," Elias said, committing the name to memory. "Find me his ghost. Find me the crack in his life." The operation had begun. Elias moved to a sterile Mossad safe house in Junyeh, the Christian enclave north of Beirut. The city was a fractured mosaic of fear. To cross from east to west Beirut was to pass through the Sniper's Alley, the Green Line, a gauntlet of checkpoints run by teenagers with rifles and ancient hatreds. Here, in Junyeh, Elias was Emile, a French-Canadian art dealer with a taste for Lebanese antiquities. It was a cover that gave him mobility and a reason to talk to people, but his real work was forensic. On a steel table, he laid out the life of Dahiyeh. He had schematics, stolen from the municipal archives, showing the power grids and telecom lines. He had surveillance reports from Sayanim, local Jewish diaspora helpers, who had driven the street. He had photos taken by a CIA contact from a moving car. He was building the geometry of access. The target building was, as expected, a fortress. The IRGC was paranoid and professional. Their guards controlled the street. They had lookouts on the roof. The Café Paradis was the only viable vector. It was perfectly, almost fatally positioned. Its second-floor apartment, a small, dusty flat above the cafe itself, had a window that aligned perfectly with the third-floor meeting room across the street. "It's too good," Dahlia said. Dahlia was his technical specialist, his mechanic. She had arrived from Tel Aviv via a fishing boat that landed on a dark beach, carrying a forged Dutch passport and 2 large waterproof cases. She was all sharp angles and sharper intellect. Where Elias saw human weakness, Dahlia saw signal propagation and structural flaws. "A perfect location is the first thing counterintelligence looks for," she argued, her voice a low whisper in the safe house. "If we can see it, they can see it. Which is why the cover must be perfect," Elias countered. "The operation isn't the hardware, Dahlia. The operation is the proprietor." He slid the file across the table. Ibrahim Cassis. The Mossad psychological unit, Mossad, had built a portrait of a broken man. Ibrahim's family had been wealthy textile merchants in the downtown hotel district. The 1975 war had incinerated their business. His brother was killed by a PLO sniper. His wife died of typhus. He was left with this small, inherited cafe in a neighborhood increasingly hostile to his faith. He was surviving, but he was dead inside. "He hates them," Elias said. "He hates the PLO for what they did. He hates the Syrians for what they're doing. And he hates Hezbollah and the Iranians for turning his home into a foreign garrison." "He's a civilian, Elias. He's not an asset. He's a victim. He'll break." "He's already broken," Elias replied, his voice hardening. "We're just going to give his anger a purpose. A broken man with a purpose is stronger than a whole man with none." Dahlia looked at the schematics. "The window on the target? It's almost certainly double-glazed. A laser mic will get vibrations, but they'll be muddy. We'll get resonance, not conversation." Elias nodded. "What do you need?" "I need a better signal. The phone lines," she said, tapping the municipal schematic. "The junction box for the entire block is in the alley behind the cafe. The target's phone lines run through it. They're not using phones for planning." "They don't have to," Dahlia said, a thin, predatory smile emerging. "They use them for logistics, for ordering food, for calling their families in Tehran. They use them to be normal. A tap on that box gives us a baseline. It gives us context. And," she added, "if I can get a parasite tap on the line, it draws power from the phone line itself. It never needs a new battery." Elias saw the shape of the operation expand. It was no longer one vector. It was 2. "First, we recruit the man," Elias said. "Then, we give him a reason to renovate." The geometry was set. They would attack from the front with light, and from the back with wire. Ibrahim Cassis wiped down the counter of the Café Paradis. The espresso machine hissed, a relic from a better time. It was 10 in the morning. His only customers were 2 old men playing backgammon, the clack of the dice the loudest sound in the room. Outside, the street was tense. A jeep mounted with a DSHK heavy machine gun rumbled past. Ibrahim didn't look up. Looking was dangerous. Noticing was fatal. He was a ghost in his own life. He served coffee to the young bearded men who came in, their eyes hard, their Kalashnikovs resting against the tables. They were polite, but their politeness was a threat. He was a Christian living on their sufferance. His life was a ledger of subtractions. His business, his family, his dignity. All that was left was this cafe, a tomb of memories, and a deep, cold, silent rage that he buried under a performance of obsequious neutrality. He dreamed of leaving, of sending his only son, Sammy, to university in France. But the cafe barely made enough to buy beans, let alone a French visa. He was trapped. That afternoon, a stranger walked in. He was not from Dahlia. He was impeccably dressed, a European suit, a silk tie. He looked like money, which meant he was either a journalist or a spy. In Beirut, they were often the same. He sat at a corner table. Ibrahim approached, wiping his hands on his apron. "Coffee," the man said. His Arabic was fluent, but with a faint, unplaceable accent. "And perhaps some advice." Ibrahim served the coffee. The man sivapped it and smiled. "Excellent. It's hard to find real coffee in this city anymore." "We import the beans ourselves, monsieur," Ibrahim said. The man leaned in. "My name is Emil. I am a facilitator. I represent a European consortium. We believe that when this war finally ends, Beirut will be rebuilt, and the men who are in the right position will make fortunes. Ibrahim stared at him, uncomprehending. Rebuilt? Monsieur, the city is still tearing itself down. Exactly. The time to invest is now. We are looking for small, stable businesses to partner with. Local businesses, ones that have weathered the storm. Like this one. Ibrahim felt a flutter of something he hadn't felt in a decade. Hope. It was quickly followed by suspicion. I have no money to sell. This place is nothing. It is not nothing, Emil said, his eyes kind. It is a foundation. It has history. And it is in a very interesting location. He gestured vaguely to the street. We believe this area will be very important. He placed a business card on the table, and on top of it, a crisp $100 bill. For the coffee and for your time. Perhaps you could think about it. What would you do, Ibrahim, if you had a partner? A silent partner who only wanted to see you succeed. Ibrahim looked at the money. It was more than he made in a week. I would fix the apartment upstairs, Ibrahim heard himself say. For my son, and a new espresso machine. Emil smiled. We are not interested in espresso machines. We are interested in relationships. I am staying in Junier, but I have business that brings me here often. I will return. The man left. Ibrahim pocketed the bill, his hand shaking. For the first time in years, he looked out his own window, not at the street, but at the foreboding building across from it. He wasn't looking at a fortress. He was looking at his prison. And this man, Emil, had just offered him a key. Elias returned to the safe house. Dahlia was waiting. He's in, Elias said. He just doesn't know it yet. The hook was set, but it needed to be reeled in slowly. A direct, large-scale investment in the café would attract the wrong kind of attention. The local Hezbollah commander, a man named Sheikh Nader, ran the neighborhood like a feudal lord. He took a tax from every business. A sudden influx of European cash would require a much larger tax, and questions would be asked. Ibrahim has to want it, Elias explained to Dahlia, and he has to believe he is in control. The vector for this was Cyprus. Mossad intelligence from Larnaca port surveillance noted that Ibrahim Cassis made a trip to Cyprus every 2 months. He took the slow ferry, a rusting tub that reeked of diesel and livestock, to buy coffee beans and cheap European cigarettes to sell under the counter. It was a small-scale smuggling operation that kept his cafe barely afloat. 2 months after their first meeting, Elias was waiting at the Larnaca port, dressed down, his expensive suit replaced by a simple jacket and trousers. He was Emil, the businessman, but this time he was a businessman checking his supply lines. He bumped into Ibrahim at a cafe near the docks. Ibrahim, what a coincidence. Ibrahim was visibly startled. Monsieur Emil, I did not expect to see you here. I have interests all over the Levant, Elias said smoothly, motioning for him to sit. Cyprus is the gateway. He ordered 2 coffees. I was disappointed not to see you again at your cafe. I thought perhaps my offer offended you. No, monsieur, Ibrahim said quickly, too quickly. It is a generous thought, but I am a simple man. This is a dangerous time. Partners are a shield, Elias finished for him. My consortium. We are not just investors. We protect our investments. We have connections. With the Syrians, with the Christian factions. We can make sure your business is stable. This was the pivot. Elias was offering protection. In Beirut, protection was a currency more valuable than money. What would you want? Ibrahim asked, his voice barely a whisper. Information, Elias said, leaning in. Nothing military. We are businessmen. We want to know the atmosphere. Who is moving in? Who is moving out? What are the militias demanding? What are the Syrians planning for the economy? Simple observations. What a smart proprietor would know. Ibrahim was silent. He understood the subtext. This was espionage, but low-level, commercial. Or so he was being led to believe. And in return? The renovation, Elias said. We will fund it. New tables, new kitchen, and the apartment upstairs. We will make it a place fit for your son. We will bring in our own specialists to install high-end items. A new air conditioning system, perhaps. European standard. Quiet. Powerful. He saw the flicker in Ibrahim's eyes. Air conditioning, a symbol of wealth, of comfort, of a life he had lost. And, Elias added, placing a small, thick envelope on the table, a stipend for your observations and to help with Sammy's education. Ibrahim looked at the envelope. This was the moment, the cold pitch. He picked it up. It was heavy. My son, he is a good boy. He deserves better than that street. Help us, Ibrahim, and he will have it, Elias said. How do I contact you? You don't, Elias said, his voice firm but not unkind. I will contact you. In 1 month, my contractor will arrive in Beirut. She will have the plans for the renovation. Your only job is to give her access to the apartment and be normal. Ibrahim Cassis nodded. He had just sold his café. He had just sold his life. He felt sick, and for the first time in a decade, he felt a wild, terrifying surge of power. The contractor arrived on a Monday, a day when the checkpoints were sluggish and humid. She traveled on a French passport identifying her as Jean, a Parisian architect specializing in historical restorations. In reality, she was Dalia, Mossad's finest technical operative. She did not go to Junier. She did not meet Elias. She took a cab directly to Dahieh, a move of calculated audacity. Her cover was that she was fearless, slightly naive, and obsessed with her work. It was the perfect disguise. She walked into the Café Paradis carrying a roll of blueprints. Ibrahim was waiting, his face pale, his hands twisting a damp cloth. Monsieur Cassis? She said, her French accent thick. I am Jean, from the consortium. She was a shock to Ibrahim. He expected a man, someone like Emile, not this young, severe woman with eyes that seemed to see through the plaster and brick. Please, Ibrahim stammered. Upstairs. He led her to the second-floor apartment. It was 2 rooms, suffocatingly hot, filled with broken furniture and the smell of dust. Dalia walked to the window and stared across the street. The light here is good, she said, her voice distant. She was measuring, calculating. The consortium, she began, unrolling the blueprints on the floor, is very specific. The renovation of the café is for you. The renovation of this apartment is for us. For you, I thought it was for my son. Your son will enjoy it, Dalia said, not looking at him, but it must be done to our specifications. She pointed to the wall facing the target building. This wall, it must be reinforced. For the new air conditioning unit, a specialized model from Germany, very heavy. She pointed to the window. And this window will be replaced. New glass, triple paned, for sound insulation. The street is so noisy. Ibrahim understood. The wall was to hide the equipment. The window was to mask its operation. The renovation will be loud, Dalia said. Drilling, hammering. It will take 1 week. We will bring our own team. Team? Ibrahim's panic was rising. 2 men. Technicians. They will arrive with the new kitchen equipment. The plan was a logistical masterpiece. A shipping container cleared through the port of Junier, with help from a friendly phalangist militia contact on the Mossad payroll, was scheduled to arrive. It contained a commercial-grade espresso machine, stainless steel counters, new tables, and in a hidden compartment, Dalia's toys. The toys were 2 systems. System Alpha, the laser microphone, a state-of-the-art emitter and receiver, disguised as the core components of the German air conditioner. It would be built into the wall with only a hair-thin aperture, invisible from the street, aiming at the target window. System Beta, the wiretap, an inductive tap for the junction box, and a burst transmitter to send the data. Your job is simple, Ibrahim, Dalia said, fixing him with her cold gaze. You will make coffee. You will tell your neighbors that you have a rich European benefactor. You will be happy. You will be loud. You will be the perfect distraction. Do you understand? And when it is done, Dalia said, we leave, and you will have the nicest cafe in Beirut, and this apartment. And the money? The money will be in an account in Cyprus, every month, so long as the air conditioner keeps working. She was turning him into the guardian of the machine. The risk was no longer just his, it was permanent. The work began on a Wednesday. A large truck bearing the logo of a kitchen supply company that didn't exist pulled up to the Café Paradis. Ibrahim, playing his role, waved excitedly to his neighbors. He was the local man who'd struck gold. The neighbors and the local Hezbollah lookouts watched with mild curiosity. They saw men haul in a massive gleaming espresso machine, steel tables, and boxes of tiles. It was a perfect piece of stagecraft. Hidden among the workers were two Kidon operatives, Mossad's elite special operations unit. They were not there to install, but to protect. They were the muscle, disguised as movers, their tool belts hiding more than wrenches. Dahlia, in overalls, directed the chaos. "The café first," she shouted, her French accent echoing. "The men need coffee while we work." While the Kidon team and local laborers made a convincing show of demolishing the old café counter, Dahlia and one Kidon operative slipped upstairs. The apartment became a surgical theater. They laid down sound-dampening mats. The first task was the wall. Dahlia used a diamond-tipped core drill, its sound masked by the construction noise below. She drilled a hole barely a centimeter wide through the thick exterior brick. Then the air conditioner was brought up in pieces. It was a marvel of operational design. The internal components were real, a fan, a condenser, but the heart of it was a sealed, lead-lined box. Inside this box was the laser emitter and the receiving sensor, both mounted on a gyroscopically stabilized platform, the kind used for tank guns. It could compensate for the building's natural vibrations. Dahlia, wearing magnifying goggles, began the agonizing work of alignment. She aimed the invisible laser beam at the pre-calculated spot on the target's third-floor window. She put on a set of headphones connected to the receiver. Static. She fine-tuned the aperture. The static shifted. She heard a voice, muffled, distorted. The double glazing was degrading the signal, just as she'd feared. "It's not clean enough," she whispered to the Kidon operative. "We're getting vibration, but not fidelity. It's noise. 8200 can't use this." Elias, listening on a secure radio from the Junier safe house, felt his stomach clench. "Dahlia, report. Alpha is suboptimal," she transmitted, using their code. "The target's shielding is too effective. I'm getting soup. We need Beta. I have to install Beta." This was the escalation. System Alpha was passive. System Beta, the wiretap, required leaving the cafe. It required Dahlia to physically access the junction box in the alley behind the building, an alley that was shared with the target. "Negative," Elias said. "The risk is too high. The alley is a kill zone. The operation is a failure without it." Dahlia retorted, her voice ice. "The laser alone is not enough, but if I can combine them, if I can use the wiretap audio to calibrate the laser's signal processing, I can teach the computer what to listen for. I can filter the soup." Elias was silent. He saw her logic. The wiretap would provide a key to unlock the audio from the laser. "1 hour, Elias said. "You have 1 hour. A Syrian patrol passes at 02:00. Dahlia looked at her watch. It was a 1:00. "Tell Ibrahim to make a pot of coffee for the guards. A strong one." The night was hot and starless. The construction noise had stopped, leaving Dahlia in a tense, buzzing silence. Dahlia changed her clothes. The French architect was gone. In her place was a figure in a dark municipal-style work uniform, her hair tucked under a cap. She carried a simple toolbox. One Kidon operative, Amos, moved to the roof of the cafe. He was their overwatch, armed with a silenced pistol and a night vision scope. Dahlia slipped out the back door of the cafe. The alley was a canyon of trash and shadows. It stank of sewage. The target building's heavily reinforced rear loomed over her. At the far end, she could see the junction box. It was old, rusted, and mounted on a concrete pole. She moved, silent as a cat. She reached the box and opened her tools. This was her true element. She didn't cut a single wire, cutting triggers alarms. She opened the box and identified the bundle of lines. Using a small, sophisticated sensor, she tested each pair until she found the lines leading to the target building. Then, she pulled out the tap. It wasn't a clip. It was a tiny, inductive ring. She clamped it around the target's primary line. It would read the electrical impulses, the magnetic field of the conversation. without ever piercing the insulation. It was invisible to a standard line test. She connected the tap to a fine, dark gray wire, as thin as a fishing line. Now came the hardest part, running the wire back to the cafe. She couldn't bury it. No time. She had to run it along the base of the wall, tacking it into the cracked mortar, blending it with the existing tangle of illicit power lines and old telephone cables. It was slow, agonizing work. Every noise, a distant shout, a cat knocking over a can, made her freeze. Through his scope, Amos saw movement. Not the Syrian patrol. Worse, a Hezbollah guard, bored, had stepped out of the target building's back door for a cigarette. He was standing 20 meters from Dahlia, in the dark. Dahlia was flattened against the wall, one arm raised, tacking the wire. She was completely exposed. In the Junia safe house, Elias heard Amos's breathing over the radio. "Target, back door, one hostile, no visual on Dahlia." Ibrahim in his cafe was praying, his rosary beads clicking. The guard lit his cigarette. The small flare illuminated his face. He was young. He stretched, looking up at the sky. Dahlia did not move. She held her breath. The wire was in her hand. The guard took a long drag. He paced a small circle. He looked down the alley, toward the junction box, but his eyes, unaccustomed to the dark, saw only shadows. He grunted, bored, and tossed the cigarette. The ember skittered across the pavement. He turned and went back inside. Dahlia exhaled, the sound inaudible. She finished the last 5 meters in 30 seconds. She slipped back into the cafe, her face slick with sweat. She held up the end of the wire. "Plug me in," she whispered to the second keyed-on operative. Dahlia returned to the apartment. The wire was fed through a tiny hole in the back wall, sealed, and plugged directly into the central processor hidden inside the air conditioner. The machine was now a hybrid. It had 2 ears, the laser, Alpha, aimed at the window, and the wiretap, Beta, listening to the phone lines. Dahlia put on her headphones. From Beta, the wiretap, the audio was pristine. She heard a man ordering flatbread and kebabs for 20 people. She heard another man complain about the humidity. It was logistical chatter, normal. Then she activated Alpha, the laser. The soup was still there, the muffled vibrations from the window. "Now for the magic," she muttered. She initiated the calibration program. The processor began to cross-reference the 2 signals. It listened to the man ordering food on the phone, Beta, and simultaneously listened for that same man's voice through the window, Alpha. The computer found a match. It isolated the unique frequency and resonance of his voice. It now had a fingerprint. It could teach itself to filter out the street noise, the glass distortion, and amplify that specific human vocal range. The muffled sound in her headphones began to change. The static receded. The soup resolved itself. The shipment from Damascus must be moved before dawn. The Syrians are demanding another payment. It was a new voice. A voice not on the phone. A voice that was only in the room. It was in Farsi. Dahlia's eyes widened. She passed the headphones to the Kaidan operative. He listened and his jaw tightened. "That's him," the operative whispered. "That's the IRGC colonel, the one we call the architect." They were in. Dahlia finalized the system. The processor would record all audio 24/7. Once every 4 hours, it would compress the data into a 2-second burst. This burst, fired from a small disguised antenna on the roof, would be beamed to a NOKT, signal relay station, on a ship in the Mediterranean. From there, it went to the aquarium in Tel Aviv. The system was automated. It was self-sufficient. It drew its main power from the cafe, but had a battery backup. The wiretap drew power from the phone line itself. It was a perfect parasitic organism. Dahlia began packing her tools. The renovation was complete. She went downstairs. Ibrahim was cleaning, his face a mask of terror. "John," he said, his voice shaking. Dahlia softened, just for a moment. Her job was done. Now, his began. "It's over, Ibrahim," she said. "The workers are leaving. You have a beautiful new cafe." She handed him a small laminated card with a phone number for a flower shop in Paris. "This is for emergencies. You will never call it. But if you are compromised." If they come for you, memorize this number, then burn the card. Call it. Ask for Jasmine. That is all. We will know. Ibrahim nodded, his eyes wide. Your job, Dahlia said, her voice firm again, is to make coffee, to be a father, to live. Do not go in that apartment. Do not touch the air conditioner. Just live, Ibrahim. That is the entire cover. Dahlia and her team walked out, got in their truck, and drove away. Ibrahim Cassis was alone. He walked over to his gleaming new espresso machine. He pulled a shot. The aroma filled the air. Upstairs, silently, the machine in the wall was listening. The intelligence was not a flood. It was a drip, but it was pure. In Tel Aviv, the analysts at 8200 began to paint a new picture. They learned the command structure. They learned names, rivalries, and habits. They learned the architect was terrified of his superiors in Tehran. They learned Sheikh Nader, the local commander, was skimming money from Iranian payments. The Café Parody LP, listening post, became the single most important source of intelligence on Hezbollah. The first major harvest came 3 weeks after activation. The laser mic picked up a heated 3-hour planning session. The topic, a coordinated attack on the Israeli security zone in South Lebanon. The analysts heard the entire plan. The target, a specific IDF outpost. The time, 03 Naqrar. The method, an IED to stop the lead patrol vehicle, followed by an RPG ambush. The IDF's Northern Command didn't just counter the ambush, they set a counter-ambush. When the Hezbollah cell moved into position, they were walking into a trap. The engagement was short and brutal. The cell was eliminated. The IDF suffered 0 casualties. In Tel Aviv, Zev and Elias listened to the after-action report. The LP is a success, Zev said. It saved lives. Our lives. Elias was less celebratory. He was thinking of Ibrahim. And the cost? The cost is necessary, Zev said. In Beirut, Ibrahim's life had changed. The cafe with its new fittings was suddenly popular. Even the militiamen who had once treated him with contempt seemed to enjoy the clean tables and superior coffee. He was making money. He had opened the Cyprus account. Sami was applying to schools in Paris. But Ibrahim was a man haunted. He would be serving coffee, his hands steady, while he knew that upstairs, a machine was recording the men at the next table, who were laughing and joking, unaware that their leaders' plans were being dissected in Tel Aviv. He became a consummate actor. He smiled. He made small talk. He complained about the electricity. He was just Ibrahim, the lucky cafe owner. Inside, he was corroding. Elias met him one last time, in Cyprus. The Katza had aged. The stress of running an asset in Dahieh was immense. You are a hero, Ibrahim, Elias told him over dinner. You are saving lives. Ibrahim looked at his benefactor. Hero? I am a traitor, Emil. I am a ghost. I serve coffee to men whose friends are being killed because of my air conditioner. You are a patriot, Elias corrected him. You are taking your country back from foreign invaders. I don't have a country anymore, Ibrahim said, his voice dead. I just have a cafe and a son. Make sure you protect my son. We are, Elias said. Sami's visa has been approved. He leaves for Paris next month. He is out. He is safe. Ibrahim nodded. He did not say thank you. He just ate his meal. The transaction was complete. His son's future for his own soul. It was, he thought, a Beirut bargain. For 6 months, the Café Parody LP was the crown jewel of Israeli intelligence. It provided warnings that stopped 3 separate bombings and helped map the IRGC's entire command and control network. Then, the unseen variable arrived. He was not a soldier. He was a technician, a new IRGC counterintelligence chief, flown in from Tehran. This man, Fikri, was not a zealot. He was a professional. He was suspicious, methodical, and he did not trust the local Hezbollah sweeps. His arrival was noted by the wiretap. He had a brief, clipped conversation with Tehran complaining about the lax security. A week later, Dahlia, now back in Tel Aviv monitoring the LP's feed, felt a jolt of ice in her veins. She heard a new sound from the laser mic, a high-frequency whine. He's sweeping, she said to the analyst next to her. He's running a full TSCM. Technical surveillance countermeasures, sweep. In the Dahieh meeting room, Fikri and his team were scanning. They used spectrum analyzers to look for transmissions. They found nothing. The burst transmitter was silent, waiting for its 4-hour window. They used non-linear junction detectors to look for electronics in the walls. They found nothing. The room was clean. Fikri was frustrated. He stood by the window, looking out at the street. He looked at the Café Paradis. "It's too perfect," he said, his voice captured faintly by the laser. A Christian, suddenly rich, right across the street. "He's just a coffee seller, Haji," a Hezbollah guard said. "No one is just anything," Fikri snapped. He pulled out a thermal imager. He scanned the cafe. He saw the heat signature from the apartment window. "There," he said. "There is a unit in that window. Air conditioning. It's running. In this weather?" It was a mild day. He then pulled out a laser detector, a simple handheld device. He aimed it at his own window. A red light flashed. The detector beeped. "A beam is hitting this glass," Fikri's voice came through Dahlia's headphones, suddenly sharp and clear. "From that apartment. They are listening, now." In Tel Aviv, alarms blared. "Compromised! The LP is compromised!" the analyst shouted. Zev grabbed the microphone. "Dahlia, shut it down! Burn it! Send the signal!" The signal was a self-destruct command, a thermite charge in the processor that would melt the entire unit, destroying the evidence. "No!" Dahlia shouted, her mind racing. "Wait, they found Alpha. They found the laser. They haven't found Beta." "What are you saying?" "They're at the window. They'll storm the cafe, they'll find the unit, but they don't know about the wiretap. It's a separate system. If we burn the unit, they'll know it was a sophisticated multi-source operation. But if they find the laser mic," Zev understood, "they'll think that was the only threat. They'll find it, declare the threat neutralized, and stop looking." "Exactly," Dahlia said. "But we have to cut the feed from Alpha, now. And we have to warn Ibrahim. He's about to have visitors." This was the crisis, the moment that defines an operation, not its success, but its failure. "Send the alert," Zev ordered. In Paris, a phone rang in a flower shop. A Sayanim answered. "Bonjour." A simple coded message was relayed from Tel Aviv. The Sayanim hung up and dialed a number in Beirut. The phone in the Café Paradis rang. Ibrahim picked it up. "Café Paradis." "This is Jasmine," the voice said in French. "We have an order for you, a rush order. Your delivery is compromised." The line went dead. Ibrahim dropped the phone. The emergency code, compromised. He looked out the window. He saw Fikri, the Iranian, staring at his apartment from the window opposite. 2 seconds later, the front door of his cafe burst open. Hezbollah guards, led by Fikri, stormed in. "The apartment?" Fikri shouted. "Get the keys." "What? What is this?" Ibrahim stammered, playing the role of his life. "I am just a—" "You are a spy!" Fikri snarled, pressing a pistol to Ibrahim's head. "The keys! Now!" Ibrahim, trembling, handed them over. The men thundered up the stairs. Ibrahim was left downstairs, a guard pointing a rifle at his chest. He closed his eyes, his lips moving in a silent prayer. Upstairs, the team kicked open the door. In Tel Aviv, Dahlia worked frantically. She couldn't send a burn signal, but she could send a remote command. She typed, system.alpha.shutdown permanent, system.beta.priority 1, system.transmitter.source beta. She had done it. She had remotely deactivated the laser. The LP was now deaf, but not mute. It was now only a wiretap. Fikri's team tore the apartment apart. They went straight for the air conditioner. They ripped it from the wall, and there it was, the processor, the lead-lined box, the gyroscopic platform, and the now inert laser emitter. Fikri examined it. He saw the craftsmanship. "Mossad!" he spat. He scanned the rest of the room. He looked for other devices, other wires. He found nothing. The wire from the alley was hidden in the wall's foundation, a separate, invisible artery. He believed he had found the entire system. "He's clean," the technician said, after sweeping the room again. This was it, a remote laser, very clever. Fikri smiled, triumphant. He went downstairs. He looked at Ibrahim, who was now weeping, a picture of pathetic terror. "You were a fool, old man," Fikri said. "You let the Jews turn you into a tool." He raised his pistol. "Haji," the local Hezbollah commander said, placing a hand on his arm. "No, not here. It will cause panic, and he is a Christian. It will be bad for our image. We have the device. The threat is over. Let us take him. We will question him." Fikri considered. The intelligence value was gone. The man was just a shell. "Take him," Fikri ordered, "and burn this Zionist den to the ground." The guards dragged Ibrahim out. Moments later, a grenade was tossed in. The Café Paradis, Ibrahim's tomb and his golden cage, erupted in flames. The operation was declared a catastrophic failure. The asset, Ibrahim Cassis, was lost, presumed tortured, and executed. The LP was destroyed. A pall fell over the aquarium. Only Dahlia and Elias knew the truth. They burned the cafe. Elias reported to Zev, his face grim. "And the asset?" "Lost. A tragedy," Zev said. "But the intel we got—" "Wait," Dahlia said, her headphones pressed to her ears. She was still monitoring the frequency. The burst transmitter, its antenna hidden on the roof, had survived the fire. She heard a click, and then a voice on a telephone line. "The fire is out. The Christian spy is gone. The Iranians are satisfied. We can use the building's shell as a temporary storage." It was the local Hezbollah commander calling his superior. The wiretap. System Beta. It was still alive. The fire had destroyed the cafe, but the junction box was in the alley. The wire, buried in the foundation, had been cooked, but its shielding held. The processor in its lead-lined box had been taken, but the tap and the transmitter were separate. Dahlia realized what had happened. The transmitter, believing the main processor was dead, had automatically rerouted, drawing power from the only source left, the inductive tap on the phone line. The phantom was still breathing. The Café Paradis was gone. In its place was a charred ruin. But in the alley, in the mud and filth, a tiny ring of metal was still clamped around a wire. The intelligence was no longer from the meeting room. There was no more laser, no more Farsi. But the phone lines, they were still live. The logistics, the calls home, the secondary planning. The Mossad was still listening. The operation hadn't ended. It had just changed form. Elias eventually retired. Dahlia became a legend in 8200, the woman who built a ghost. Zev moved to politics. Years later, when Beirut was rebuilt, a new, modern building rose where the Café Paradis had been. But the wiretap, a forgotten relic of a secret war, remained in the ground. Some analysts in Tel Aviv claimed that on quiet nights, when the frequency was just right, they could still hear the faint crackling sound of conversations from a street in Dahye, a faint electronic echo from a table by a window in a cafe that was no more.